James Bond has skillfully avoided the weapons of Le Chiffre's men, and through skill, and more than his fair share of luck, the cards have fallen his way. Le Chiffre is defeated, Bond has won. But will he live long enough to enjoy victory?
At the hotel, Leiter insisted on accompanying Bond to his room. Both men had their hands on their guns. It was as Bond had left it 6 hours before. "No reception committee," observed Leiter. "I wouldn't put it past them to try a last throw. Do you think I ought to stay up and keep you company?" "You get your sleep," said Bond. "They won't be interested in me without the money, and I've got an idea for looking after that. Thanks for all you've done. I hope we get on a job again one day." "Suits me," said Leiter, "so long as you can draw a 9 when it's needed. And bring Vesper along with you," he added dryly. He went out and closed the door. Bond turned away and took out of his pocket the cheque for 40 million francs. He folded this very small. Then he opened the door and looked up and down the corridor. He left the door wide open, and with his ears cocked for footsteps or the sound of the lift, he set to work with a small screwdriver. 5 minutes later, he gave a last-minute survey to his handiwork, put some fresh cigarettes in his case, closed and locked the door, and went off down the corridor and across the hall and out into the moonlight. Bond took Vesper's arm and led her over the gilded step of the Royale Gallant. The nightclub was small and dark, lit only by candles in gilded candelabra. In the far corner, a trio consisting of a piano, an electric guitar and drums was playing La Vie en Rose with muted sweetness. Seduction dripped on the quietly throbbing air. They were given a corner table near the door. Bond ordered a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and scrambled eggs and bacon. They sat for a time listening to the music, and then Bond turned to Vesper. "It's wonderful sitting here with you and knowing the job's finished. It's a lovely end to the day. The prize-giving." He expected her to smile. She said, "Yes, isn't it?" in a rather brittle voice. Between the thumb and first 2 fingers of her right hand, she held one of Bond's cigarettes, as an artist holds a crayon, and though she smoked with composure, she tapped the cigarette occasionally into an ashtray, when the cigarette had no ash. Bond noticed these small things because he felt intensely aware of her, and wanted to draw her into his own feeling of relaxed sensuality. But he accepted her reserve. He thought it came from a desire to protect herself from him, or else was a reaction to his coolness earlier. He was patient. He drank champagne and talked a little about the happenings of the day. She answered perfunctorily. She sipped at her champagne and rarely glanced at Bond. He felt frustrated. The scrambled eggs came, and they ate in silence. At 4 o'clock, Bond was about to call for the bill, when the maître d'hôtel appeared at their table and inquired for Miss Lind. He handed her a note, which she took and read hastily. "Oh, it's only Matisse," she said. "He says when I come to the entrance hall, he's got a message for you. Perhaps he's not in evening clothes or something. I won't be a minute. Then perhaps we could go home." She gave him a strained smile. "I'm afraid I don't feel very good company this evening. It's been a rather nerve-wracking day. I'm so sorry." Bond watched her take the few steps to the entrance. He lit a cigarette. He felt flat. He took a last mouthful of champagne. It tasted bitter, as the first glass too many always does. He would have liked to have seen Matisse's cheerful face and heard his news, perhaps even a word of congratulation. Suddenly the note to Vesper seemed odd to him. It was not the way Matisse would do things. He would have joined them in the nightclub, whatever his clothes. Bond hastily paid the bill, not waiting for the change. He hurried through the gaming room and looked carefully up and down the long entrance hall. He cursed and quickened his step. No Vesper, no Matisse. He was almost running. He got to the entrance and was halfway down the steps when he heard a faint cry, then the slam of a door way to the right. With a harsh growl and stutter from the exhaust, a beetle-browed citron shot out of the shadows into the light of the moon. Its tail rocked on its soft springs as if a violent struggle was taking place on the back seat. With a snarl, it raced out to the wide entrance gate in a spray of gravel. A small black object shot out of an open rear window and thudded into a flower bed. The car headed off between the shops on the main street towards the coast road. Bond knew he would find Vesper's evening bag among the flowers. He ran back with it across the gravel to the brightly lit steps and scrabbled through its contents. The crumpled note was there amongst the usual feminine baggage. "Can you come to the entrance hall for a moment? I have news for your companion, René Matisse." It was the crudest possible forgery. Bond leapt for the Bentley, blessing the impulse which had made him drive it over after dinner. As the car rocked to the left outside the gate, Bond settled himself for the pursuit, briefly savouring the echo of the huge exhaust. Soon he was out on the coast road, a broad highway through the sand dunes, which he knew from his morning's drive. He knew the Citroën must have come this way. He hoped soon to see the distant shaft of its headlights. The night was still and clear. As he drove, whipping the car faster and faster through the night, with the other half of his mind he cursed Vesper and Em for having sent her on the job. This was just what he had been afraid of. These blithering women who thought they could do a man's work. Why the hell couldn't they stay at home and mind their pots and pans and stick to their frocks and gossip? For Vesper to fall for an old trick like that and get herself snatched and probably held to ransom like some bloody heroine in a strip cartoon. Bond boiled at the thought of the fix he was in. Of course, the idea was a straight swap. The girl against his cheque for 40 million. Well, he wouldn't play. Wouldn't think of playing. She was in the service and knew what she was up against. He wouldn't even ask Em. The job was more important than her. Bond's mind raged furiously on with the problem as he flung the great car down the coast road, automatically taking the curves. He knew he must be gaining fast. On an impulse, he slowed down to 70 and turned on his fog lights. Sure enough, without the blinding curtain of his own headlights, he could see the glow of another car a mile or two down the coast. Ahead, in the Citroën, there were 3 men and the girl. Le Chiffre was driving, his big fluid body hunched forward, his hands light and delicate on the wheel. Beside sat the squat man who had carried the stick in the casino. In his left hand he grasped a thick lever. In the back seat was the tall, thin gunman. His right hand lay caressingly on Vesper's left thigh, which stretched out naked beside him. Apart from her legs, which were naked to the hips, Vesper was only a parcel. Her long black velvet skirt had been lifted over her arms and head and tied above her head with a piece of rope. Where her face was, a small gap had been torn in the velvet so that she could breathe. She was not bound in any other way, and she lay quiet, her body moving sluggishly with the swaying of the car. Le Chiffre was concentrating half on the road ahead and half on the onrushing glare of Bond's headlights in the driving mirror. He seemed undisturbed when not more than a mile separated the hare from the hounds, and he even brought the car down from 80 to 60 miles an hour. Now, as he swept round a bend, he slowed down still further. In the mirror, Bond's great headlights were lighting up the bend. Le Chiffre seemed to make up his mind. Allez. The man beside him pulled the lever sharply upwards. The boot at the back of the car yawned open like a whale's mouth. There was a tinkling clatter on the road. Le Chiffre threw the Citroën left-handed down a narrow side road. He stopped the car with a jerk, and all 3 men got swiftly out and doubled back under cover of a low hedge to the crossroads, now fiercely illuminated by the lights of the Bentley. Each of them carried a revolver. The Bentley screamed down towards them like an express train. As Bond hurtled round the bend, he was working out his plan of action. He imagined that the enemy driver would try to dodge off into a side road if he got the chance, so when he saw no lights ahead, it was a normal reflex to prepare to brake. He was only doing about 60 as he approached the black patch across the right-hand crown of the road, which he assumed to be the shadow cast by a wayside tree. Even so, there was no time to save himself. There was suddenly a small carpet of glinting steel spikes right under his offside wing. Then he was on top of it. The heavy car whirled across the road in a tearing, dry skid, slammed the left bank with a crash that knocked Bond out of the driving seat onto the floor, and then, facing back up the road, it reared slowly up, its front wheels spinning, and its great headlights searching the sky. For a split second, resting on the petrol tank, it seemed to paw at the heavens like a giant praying mantis. Then slowly it toppled over backwards and fell with a splintering crash of coachwork. Le Chiffre and his 2 men only had to walk a few yards from their ambush. "Put your guns away and get him out," he ordered brusquely. "Be careful of him. I don't want a corpse." The 2 men got down on their knees. One of them took out a long knife and cut some of the fabric away from the side of the convertible hood and took hold of Bond's shoulders. He was unconscious and immovable. The thin man felt his heart and then slapped his face hard on either side. Bond grunted and moved a hand. The thin man slapped him again. "That's enough," said Le Chiffre. "Tie his arms and put him in the car. Here." He threw a roll of flex to the man. He walked back to the car. His face showed neither pleasure nor excitement. It was the sharp bite of the wire flex into his wrists that brought Bond to himself. When he was yanked to his feet and pushed towards the narrow side road where the engine of the Citroën was already running softly, he found that no bones were broken. But he felt in no mood for desperate attempts to escape, and allowed himself to be dragged into the back seat of the car without resisting. He looked to the right, past the thin man who was lying back with his eyes closed. His first reaction was one of scorn. Damn fool girl getting herself trussed up like a chicken. But then he felt sorry for her. Her naked legs looked so childlike and defenseless. "Vesper," he said softly. There was no answer from the bundle in the corner, and Bond suddenly had a chill feeling. But then she stirred slightly. At the same time, the thin man caught him a hard, backhanded blow over the heart. "Silence." Bond doubled over with the pain. The thin man had hit him a hard, professional-cutting blow with the edge of the hand. There was something rather deadly about his accuracy and lack of effort. Le Chiffre reversed furiously back onto the main road. By now it was dawn, about 5 o'clock, Bond guessed, and he reflected that a mile or 2 on was the turning to Le Chiffre's villa. Now that he realized that Vesper had only been a sprat to catch a mackerel, the whole picture became clear. It was an extremely unpleasant picture. For the first time since his capture, fear came to Bond and crawled up his spine. He knew that he was utterly and absolutely in their power.